The iQOO Z7 Pro is here and it is different from the iQOO phones of the past. How? Well, for starters, it has a curved display and it is the slimmest and lightest phone in its segment. And we all know that until now, iQOO's performance has generally been on performance and the gaming DNA of its phones. It's not like the iQOO Z7 Pro doesn't have the performance chops, but that's not the only important feature out here. And if you look at it, the Z7 Pro actually feels closer to Vivo's DNA than iQOO's. But how does that affect the overall experience of using the phone is exactly what we're going to find out in this video. If you're here for the very first time, I'm Arshad. You're watching Trakin Tech English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. The first thing that struck me about the Z7 Pro is how slim and light it is. The phone's about 7.36 millimeters thick and it weighs only about 176 grams. That of course makes the phone absolutely fantastic to hold and use, and the in-hand feel is pretty good too. By the way, the back of the phone is made of glass, AG glass is what iQOO calls it, and the side is plastic. However, I do like the CMF and especially the color options. This one's called Blue Lagoon, but there's another color variant called Graphite Matte, and that one is an absolute stunner, honestly. I would have actually preferred that variant over this one. The camera module on the back is of course massive for what's essentially a single camera setup with a 2MP depth camera. But thankfully, iQOO has kept the table wobble to a minimum and you don't feel it that much when you've placed it flat on a flat surface. You get IP52 rating for what it's worth, and most of the ports and buttons are at the bottom. You get a Type-C 2.0 port at the bottom. You get a single speaker and the SIM card tray which accepts 2 nano SIM cards. There's no support for an SD card slot. So with the Z7 Pro for the first time around, iQOO has concentrated on the design and made a slim and light phone. So there are compromises in functionalities for sure, which is basically you don't get a 3.5mm headphone jack, you don't get stereo speakers, none of that. But I'm glad that iQOO's made a different looking phone this time around, and this design is definitely going to stand out for a lot of users, and it does stand out under Rs 25,000. Even if it is slightly inspired by Vivo, it looks good, so it's okay. So moving on to the display, I think this is the first time around that iQOO has actually provided a curved display on the front. I'm not so entirely sure if that's true. You guys let me know. Anyway, iQOO calls this a 3D curved panel, and you all know by now that I'm not a fan of curved panels, especially when it comes to gaming, but there's no denying the fact that curved panels look absolutely stunning. Now this curved panel is a large 6.78 inch unit. It's an AMOLED display and it's got short sensation UV protection on top of it as well, and the resolution that you get is Full HD+. You also do get a 120Hz refresh rate with smart switch available, which means that it can switch between 60 and 120 depending on what content is playing up on the screen. Now when I was testing the Z7 Pro, there's one thing that's become clear with most iQOO phones is that display calibration is generally very good. So if you're somebody who cares about color accuracy on displays, then you do get the professional mode with which you can ensure that if you're editing videos or photos on the display itself, you can trust it for colors. And apart from that, you do get HDR out of the box on both Netflix and YouTube. Not a lot of phones in this price category give you that. And since you have HDR support, the local peak brightness of 1300 nits does come in handy, and the HDR tuning has been done very well as well. Many a times you will see that the highlights are blown out, but that's not the case with the Z7 Pro. It's actually very well tuned. And if you're using it out and about under direct sunlight, the brightness is good enough. I have absolutely no complaints over there. You know what I feel after using the Z7 Pro is how far display technology has come about, because we used to get these kind of curved displays with really good calibration on phones that cost at least 40,000-50,000 rupees. Now we're getting that for under 25,000, which is fantastic, right? Anyway, moving on, since this is an AMOLED panel, you do get an in-display fingerprint scanner and it's really fast to unlock, no problem there. The haptic feedback is soft and mushy. You do not get the kind of tight vibration feedback that you get from X-axis linear motors that are sometimes present on phones in this price class. And you get a single mono speaker and the experience is not good. If you are somebody who cares about stereo speakers, there are many other phones in this price range that you can pick up. But there is an alternative for somebody who doesn't care about speaker setups or stereo speakers specifically on phones. For me, what matters more is high-res support for wireless and wired audio. That's available here. Alright, let's talk about the specs. The iQOO Z7 Pro has the same Dimensity 7200 chip that we saw inside the Vivo V27, and there are two variants of the phone, 8128GB and 8256GB. Now this is LPDDR4X RAM type and UFS 2.2 storage. The Dimensity 7200 is based on TSMC's 4nm fabrication process. Now a lot of people might think that this is the the most powerful chip that you can get under rupees 25,000, but that's not really the case. The Redmi K50i exists and it has Dimensity 8100, which is more powerful. Now, if you compare it to the other segment leaders in terms of SoCs like the Snapdragon 782G or the 778, then definitely the Dimensity 7200 is far more powerful and it's a very, very good processor. The Antutu scores speak for themselves. And in our testing, the iQOO Z7 Pro runs pretty stable too, despite being a slim phone, which was very surprising for me because we ran our 3D Mark Wildlife test and the GPU stability was 99.5% and the battery drop was 6% and it only got about 4 degrees hot. The phone doesn't run hot at all. And the CPU stability in our throttling test, where we ran 40 threads for 30 minutes, was 89%, which is absolutely fantastic. When it comes to heating and throttling, I think iQOO has it under control. Of course, with this kind of a powerful processor, you don't have to worry about the phone stuttering in daily use. That didn't happen even once. And if you're somebody who likes to play BGMI, then you can expect ultra frame rates at HDR graphics or extreme frame rates at smooth graphics, which is about 60 FPS gameplay. But on Call of Duty, you can get 90 FPS gameplay at the lowest graphics setting. Also, because iQOO has that gaming DNA installed on the Z7 Pro as well, especially with the motion controls, which are definitely useful once in a while. So whether you're considering this phone for gaming or for basic usage, the Z7 Pro does the job and does it better than many other phones under rupees 25,000. Alright, let's talk about the network capabilities. You do not get NFC, let me put it out there because that's something that I've been using a lot lately. And you get Wi-Fi 6 support as well and support for 10 5G bands. 5G support is fantastic with the support for N77 and N78 as well. And of course, 5G performance is really good too. Generally hasn't been a problem with iQOO phones and it continues to be good on the Z7 Pro. Now the battery inside is a fairly large 4600 mAh unit despite being a very slim phone. So iQOO has packed it in tightly. And apart from that, you also get 66 watt charger inside the box. Now this charger can charge this phone in about 32 to 35 minutes from 0 to 100, which is of course great. Now the battery has been tuned well enough and you do get decent battery life, but don't expect it to be a battery monster. Anyway, the phone charges fast, so that shouldn't be too much of a concern. As long as the battery life is not bad, it should be okay. Now, software-wise, you get FunTouch OS 13 based on Android 13, and iQOO also promises 2 years of software updates and 3 years of security updates as well. But the phone is filled with a lot of bloatware, a lot of apps that I felt were completely unnecessary, but I think that's what iQOO has to do to subsidize the price of the hardware. So bloatware also you can uninstall, hot apps, hot games can be disabled. But what I'm not a fan of is that FunTouch UI itself is not a very refined experience. It does have a lot of features that most people look for, but it lacks the polish, and this is something that I've spoken about in most Vivo and iQOO videos that I've made till now. Alright, finally let's talk about the cameras, or in a sense the two cameras that are important. The primary one is a 64 megapixel Samsung GW3 sensor. It's mated to a lens which has an aperture of f/1.9, and you also do get optical image stabilization as well. And on the front you get a 16MP selfie camera. So the secondary camera on the rear is basically a 2MP depth sensor, which of course is not too useful. Considering the fact that there is no ultra wide, that definitely could be a cause of concern for a lot of buyers who do like ultra wide angle cameras or secondary useful cameras. Now, while the Z7 Pro lacks the ultra wide, the camera tuning has been done exceptionally well. The primary camera captures a good amount of details, especially when you look at the 100% crop of any image. The color reproduction in natural mode is actually close to natural and it's particularly good. And you can also switch to boosted colors if you want that slightly saturated look which you want to share on social media. The skin tones are close to neutral as well. A little warm but really nice looking. The HDR tuning is also done well with a good amount of details being pulled out from the shadows and the highlights kept fairly well under control. But where the Z7 Pro also excels is in low light performance with the super night mode, and most importantly the aura light flash, which is new on an iQOO phone. It does a good job of killing the red eye and offers a nice soft exposure on the face as well. The Z7 Pro selfie camera is rich in details and the skin tones are close to accurate too. And when you look at the portrait modes on both the primary and selfie cameras, I like the portrait effect. You can change the bokeh effect prior to shooting or after you've taken the picture as well, so it's very well done. The Z7 Pro also offers portrait video shooting, which is a feature that a lot of users have been asking us about many phones, so it's available and it's fairly decently done. As for video recording, you can shoot 4K 30 FPS videos with superb stabilization no less. So it uses both OIS and AIS to actually stabilize the footage well. The dynamic range performance of videos is pretty good too. And the front camera can shoot at, of course, 1080p 30 FPS. So overall, if you look at it, I'm genuinely impressed with the cameras on the Z7 Pro. It's a good camera phone under rupees 25,000. And let me know if you guys want a comparison with any other phone so we can work on that. Do take it to the comments. So when brands start planning for phones under rupees 25,000, they have to consider a few compromises and there is a certain direction that they have to take. In that pursuit, with most brands, I think the idea is to provide the best value proposition because India is a very very value sensitive market, so value for money is very, very important. I say it's value for money because you get a thin and light design, you get a fantastic display, very good primary camera performance for sure, and selfie camera performance as well, and really good overall performance too with the Dimensity 7200 chip. The compromises are also out there for you to see very clearly. There's no stereo speaker, there is no ultra wide angle camera, and it could have lived with a few bloatware apps as well. Now, if you can take these compromises in your stride, and if you're okay living with those compromises, then this is a good looking phone to consider. So that's about the iQOO Z7 Pro from my side. Let me know if you guys want any full comparisons, camera comparisons, and we'll definitely try working on that. And I'll see you guys in the next video. There are a lot of videos coming because there are a lot of launches happening as well. Alright, until then, keep tracking and stay safe.